Why do you have to project your fear? Why can't you project your hope? Started acting classes when I was about 8. It was both a mask for myself and also shaking off myself.
Open audition, what's that day like for you?
They lined up about 50 girls at a time. You had to step forward. This was where I got nervous.
Unfortunately, all my shoes have mysteriously disappeared.
I just had such belief that I was meant to do this. I was kind of in service to this character. It was such a revelation that somebody could be so peculiar and so fine with it, and not as a defiant thing, just as I am who I am. Going back to school and suddenly being famous, I was not equipped to deal with that, and that was difficult. I had an eating disorder when I was 11 years old. Anorexia felt very, very safe and very reliable. This is something that's not ever going to let me down. This is something I'm good at because I'm addicted to it, because I'm stuck in this cycle. I really credit my family. They helped me, they were very sensitive, and that gave me the courage to stop depending on an eating disorder for self-worth. I don't think happiness is the goal, and I don't think happiness is the guarantee if you follow your heart. I think living intensely and fully, I think that's the guarantee.
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of. This week on the show, we have Evanna Lynch, and she is the Irish actress best known as Luna Lovegood in the massively successful Harry Potter film series, and she has an incredible story. Born in a small town in Ireland, she never dreamed that she would be part of this massive blockbuster. She was actually struck with anorexia at a very young age, and when she was in the hospital, started writing letters to J K Rowling, who's the author of the Harry Potter series, and she developed a relationship with her, and she started really believing that she could be Luna Lovegood. And when it was time to come to London, she came with her father, and she did an open interview with all sorts of actresses who wanted this part, and she landed it, and it transformed her life. But she continued going back to Ireland, staying in the same school, and she's got an incredible adventure to talk about. She later moved to LA, and now she is a vegan activist, and she's got an amazing podcast called the CHICKPEEPS. I know you're gonna enjoy this interview, whether you're a Harry Potter fan or not. She's very real, and I really enjoyed my time with Evanna. And I love it that you're here to listen and to learn, but London Real is a lot more than that. We're all about transformation. And if you want to take your life to the next level, maybe learn to publicly speak or learn to broadcast yourself like I do, or turn your passion into a business, that's what we do inside the Academy. So jump on in there and join one of our courses. I would love to transform you. And now I leave you with Miss Luna Lovegood. London Real doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Real Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, We have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Evanna Lynch, the Irish actress, vegan activist, and podcaster who rose to prominence for your portrayal of Luna Lovegood in the massively successful Harry Potter film series. You've since starred in independent films like Simon and Maurice's My Name is Emily, and will perform Enda Walsh's iconic play Disco Pigs in New York. You recently became vegan and have launched your own podcast, CHICKPEEPS, to encourage your fan base to embrace the movement. Evanna, welcome to London Real.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome to have a fellow broadcaster here.
Yeah, newly. I only just I kind of didn't believe I was a podcaster for like a few weeks because I was expecting it to fall apart. But I recently was like, okay, I'm a podcaster now. I'm doing this.
You are. And all I got to say is stick with it because it's an incredible adventure.
Yeah.
You know, I promised myself 6 years ago I would do an episode a week.
Nice.
And now we're 400 some into it, and it's literally changed my life. And
so amazing.
As I told you before, we now teach students how to do it. And
right.
what more than anything, it actually transforms your life. Because I think it forces you to live life to the fullest, to get all this information in and to explore ideas.
Yeah, and to reach out to people.
And
be really curious about. And I've always had that naturally, which is I think why I wanted partly to start it, because I was meeting all these people because I was like had a platform in the vegan community, and I was like, I want to ask you questions, so that's how it happened. But it is scary, like doing a project where it's like, well, there's no end to this. This is an ongoing project. It's not like doing a book or a film or anything. You're like, oh, you're right. It has to become your lifestyle.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of tension there, or scariness, but there's also a beauty in that maybe you don't know where it's going, and you don't know where it'll lead you. And I mean, the people that have sat in that chair, like, it literally changed my life. And I've made movies about them now, and they've become good friends of mine, and they've changed the course of my life. It's wild. Wow. So I encourage you to keep going, and I'm sure you will. So I want to talk about that more later. You know, I don't know where to start with you, so I figure we would start from the beginning. So tell us, where are you from, and what was it like growing up there?
Yeah, I'm from a place called Turmanfeckin in County Louth. Real place name. It's like a small village, and I grew up with my parents and two sisters and brother in the countryside. Lots of animals, lots of cats. Kind of had a continuously expanding family of cats over the years. And
that's Ireland, just to be clear.
Ireland, yeah.
And is that West Coast, East Coast?
East Coast. It's like an hour north of Dublin.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And what is that like? I mean, what is it like to grow up in Ireland? You know, in America, you know, everyone's Irish on St. Patrick's Day, and yet I don't know if anyone really...
Yeah, they all call it St. Paddy's Day. That's a real pet peeve.
Oh, is it really?
They call it St. Paddy's Day, and it's Patty, as in like Patricia.
Oh, P-A-T-T. Yeah.
Anyway, that's a little thing. Growing up, I mean, to be honest, when I grew up there, I actually didn't like living there as a child. I thought it was really boring. I thought all the fun stuff happened in England and America. And I mean, especially because I wanted to be an actor, but I just saw no way to do that. And I just couldn't see, and I kind of felt it was like, all the interesting Irish people go away, they all leave. But I don't know, now it's that cliche thing of having left home. I'm like, oh, it gave me such integrity, and it made me value the really important stuff, the stuff that you like can't kind of create and build on your own. Yeah, I don't know, just authenticity and kindness. Irish people don't take themselves too seriously, and they're, you know, fun and crack is important to them.
What is the crack, if you had to explain that? Because I never heard that term until I came to England.
It's fun. It's just a laugh. It's like good vibes.
Right.
Yeah, good vibes.
Okay. And were you in a small town? And what were your parents like? What kind of background professionally were they in? That kind of thing.
Yes, it was. I couldn't even really call it a town. There wasn't a bus service. You know, if you want to get into town, Mom, can you bring me into town? That kind of way. My parents are both teachers. My dad taught at the school I went to, the secondary school, and my mom is still a teacher. And they were just like really into books. My mom and dad gave me great love of books. They always read to us and always encouraged us to do whatever we wanted to do, me and my siblings. But I think they still back then they really struggled to see arts as like a career option, as you know, they're very much like work is one thing and it's you do it every day for a certain number of hours, and they still, I think they found it hard to grasp that being an artist, some days you don't have work, and some days your work is just, I don't know, hunched over a little project of your own and for hours. And that idea, and I think that passed on to me for a while. I was like, I had this sense that I should sort of be suffering for my work, or I shouldn't enjoy it. Like I enjoyed acting so much, and I enjoyed the work I was doing, and I was like, I had a lot of guilt about that actually. That you should kind of be in pain.
Right.
I think that's very Irish mentality.
Said that work isn't fun and you have to toil.
Yeah, work should be labor.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It shouldn't fill you up with joy the way acting and art did for me. Yeah, definitely had guilt for that, and there was a sense of like, you'd have to be really lucky. That and actually, because then I spent 5 years in America, and I found they have a really different attitude that you can work for whatever you want. You just, it's not like, they have this work ethic that I feel is built on hope and optimism, which before that, I hadn't worked as hard at my acting career because I was like, you just have to be lucky. You have to have people discover you and things like that. And yeah, living in LA, it's a city of dreamers, and sometimes too many dreamers, but I think sometimes the Irish mentality is too practical and too realistic, and you have to, as an artist, you have to be slightly on the optimistic side about your abilities and your dreams.
Were you always thinking inside, I got to get a proper job someday, or I have to find some real work?
Yeah, and I still think I have that. Yeah, or just like, this is all going to fall apart, or this is a really nice phase. I'm lucky, and beneath that, a real sense of unworthiness. I don't deserve to get to enjoy my job this much. So yeah, and I work on that because I don't agree with it. Like your story, what you told me about, you worked in banking and then you just was like, I'm gonna do what I want to do to follow my passion. I think that's where the best work comes from, and otherwise life becomes really hard, and I want to enjoy life and work. I don't think work is something that is separate and that you don't enjoy.
And yet that is a lot of the Irish mentality. It's also
schlepping,
yeah, and life is a struggle in Ireland, and there's been a history of struggle, right? I mean, it's hard, right?
I think this generation is really breaking free of that and showing you what you can do. But a lot of the time, I see that Irish people have to go abroad and travel to find that, to get away from that guilt, all that guilt and shame, which has a lot to do with religion, with that upbringing, growing up in a Catholic society of people saying, you shouldn't ask for too much, you shouldn't expect too much, and that, that fear-based mentality around God is like, you need to be thanking him and telling him that you don't deserve this, or else it will be taken away. And I just don't like all of that. I don't believe that's what God is at all.
Right, and there is that kind of guilt and shame all the time.
Yeah.
Like you're always doing something wrong in the eyes of God, and you're asking forgiveness.
Yeah, and just don't have too much pleasure. Just don't have too much fun.
Right.
You don't be too happy.
Which is kind of, is that anti-artistic in a way? I mean, do artists think differently, you think, than some of those?
Yeah, I think they want to feel all the feelings fully, pleasure and pain. Sorry, am I messing with my microphone? Yeah, just go, like that's where that stuff comes from, falling deeply in love and then deeply out of it, and just intensity.
Yeah.
And I think I probably held myself back from that a lot because of that feeling of unworthiness.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet now that you've been away from it, when you go home, you do realize that there were some really nice core values that you got.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was some good and bad there.
I love how grounded they are, and I love the family thing. This Irish idea, don't get notions about yourself, like that like they laugh at you. I was just panicking there that this Facebook chat was going to go to my private page, because I was like, if my friends and family see that I'm putting an interview out there about myself, they will like there'll be such a hard time about it.
Still,
I probably still will get that now.
Really?
Yeah, like it's just the idea of posting an interview about yourself on a page, and then I went to LA, and it's like people literally pay for photo shoots of themselves. It's nothing to do with their job, or sometimes it's not even about engagement or baby. It's just like, I want a photo shoot of myself, and that's just like very far into the Irish mentality. Yeah.
And even though you've been in billion-dollar blockbuster movies, there's still something about you posting that interview that they might be like, that's
notions.
Weird. Okay.
A friend of mine had this, he had a funny comparison. He was like, in Ireland, they say, you think a lot of yourself, don't you? And in America, they're like, you think a lot of yourself. Like, that's what they think, that's admirable. Right. Where in Ireland, it's like, that's a bad thing. You shouldn't be too full of yourself.
Yeah. No, I've heard this a lot. I mean, obviously, I'm an American in London. And there's some of that mentality in England, too. Although I would say it's probably more intense in Ireland.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's definitely here, too. And I always think it comes down to a little bit of like even a geographical thing. I mean, traditionally, there was only so much land in Ireland and in England. And in America, it was always like, if you want to make it, you can go out west and there's tons of resources, land, and whatever. Just you had to have a dream, and the country was built on dreams, especially the West Coast. It was just like, go for it. And so I think that mentality is still carried over from the last 100 years. Whereas here, it was kind of like, well, there's no new land. So all the land and money came from a family, and you have to watch your upbringing, what's your last name, and what's your accent, and that kind of determines who you are.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, more on my theories later when I start my book. So, you said you felt some guilt and stuff about what happened to you, but I mean, when I hear your story, you have this really unique thing that happened to you. But let's talk about you first. The arts, when did you realize that was super important to you? Let me just check that microphone really quick.
Yeah, it's annoying, isn't it?
Down. There we go. Is that, how's that?
Yeah, that's
okay,
better.
Perfect,
cool.
Perfect.
I don't know if it was ever a full realization. It was just like in me. I had this weird thing of like expecting I was going to be an actress without knowing about, like, never having a light bulb moment of like, I want to be an actor. You know, people talk about that where they go to shows and they realize they want to do that.
Yeah.
I think I just was like, I want to be at the center of the story. I even remember, like, when I was younger, we used to go to Catholic Mass every week. We still, my parents still do.
Right. That's the original show, isn't it?
Okay, exactly.
Okay.
There was a children's Mass on every week. Every second week on a Saturday. And I remember, like, as a 5 or 6 year old being there and like, I want to be on that stage. It wasn't an altar to me, it was a stage. And it wasn't like, it was just the idea that they were at the center of the story. They were at the center of what was unfolding and what was exciting, and I just wanted to be part of that. So consider that my first acting gig.
Interesting. And yet your personality is probably more introverted than extroverted?
Definitely.
But still you wanted to be there on the stage.
I don't know. I can't really understand that. I'm still very introverted, but and as a child I was extremely shy. And had this thing of I don't deserve to take up space, but then other characters would give me that permission.
Right.
It was like their pain and their story was more valid, and it gave me validity to speak.
Okay.
Give me permission. Yeah.
When were you first able to do that? Like take on another character? Because in Mass, you're not necessarily another character, even though you're doing this kind of ceremony. But when were you able to kind of first do that? Yeah,
well, I started acting classes when I was about 8, and everything. We were just doing like monologues and things like that. Every time I got a character who had a strong voice and who had opinions, I just, it was like it was both a mask for myself and also shaking off myself, being free of that, and just, I guess it would have been then. Those moments of standing up in front of people and not being afraid of them, and feeling like I belong here, I have a right to speak right now, which I would walk around never feeling that, I would go into a new room with new social group of people, and I would just feel like I want to be swallowed up. And yeah, that's a really dark way to live. So anytime I got relief from that was such a gift, and that's what acting gave.
When did you realize, and other people realize, that you had a talent for this?
My early teachers were always really encouraging. It was a place called the Little Duke Theatre. They still are running. My teachers there were so kind to me, and I got a few distinctions on exams, things like that. And then also another friend of mine I had an eating disorder when I was like 11 years old. I was in clinic for about 3.5 months, and they would have people come in to teach us things, just other hobbies, as an idea of being like taking our mind off of what we were going through, this recovery thing, and having hobbies, developing other sides of yourself. And they brought in a drama teacher, and he specifically, like towards the end of my stay at that clinic, sat me down and was like, you have a talent for this and you should pursue this. And he gave me like a child agency's number and things like that. And that didn't end up going anywhere, but that stuck with me, the fact that he saw something. And I remember there was like one amazing time, because in that clinic, this is oversharing, but there was a really not nice feeling of the staff were against the patients. Like they were quite mean, actually. And
was it just a clinic for anorexia? Or was
all eating disorders.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and we weren't often treated as like people. We were treated as sick people, which is that's a whole other conversation. I don't believe that's how you deal with people with those illnesses. But I remember he used he understood, this drama teacher, what was going on and how angry we were and how frustrated, and he helped me turn this monologue into a kind of a middle finger to the nurses without them knowing it. It was like a Shakespearean monologue, and it was so nice to like get up in front of them and say all these things without saying it. And they just clapped politely, had no idea. But I remember that being like really powerful at a time when I was sick and felt like something that I depended on was being taken away from me. For him to be like, here's another thing that you can love and throw yourself into, and it can make you feel whole again. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, but that was when I was like, 11, 12. And then I continued doing acting classes. Then I got the role in Potter when I was 14, so like
14,
about 2 years later.
When you look back on that anorexia nervosa, what is that, by the way? And now that you look back on it, that you've had 15 years to process it, what would you think was happening in Evanna to make that manifest itself?
Yeah, it's kind of what I described earlier, of that feeling of I don't deserve to take up space, of absolute unworthiness, and it's fear. It's completely succumbing to fear. Everyone, for your whole life, I've realized, will probably have this fear. I'm not good enough and I won't be loved. And we do things that help us deal with that and that build us up and make us feel like, help us develop our own self-love. But I think at that age, I didn't have any of that, didn't have any of those things in place. And then I found something, being thin or being good at having strong willpower. They're seen as like people covet those things. And I think I just started dieting and started getting attention for it. And then it's an addiction. It is an addiction. It becomes an addiction. And it really numbs, because it consumes your whole energy, all your energy, all your thoughts, all your heart and soul, to the point where like you don't have any other personality. You stop seeing your friends because all you can think about is exercise and calories, and they don't want to be around that, and you think it's a waste of time. And I stopped developing all my passions. And the thing was, like, everything else felt like a risk. Like, it's a risk to suppose that you could be loved for being a good actor. It's a risk to suppose that you could be loved for being clever or being pretty. Like, there's always somebody who's better at those things. Whereas I think an eating disorder like anorexia felt very, very safe and very reliable. Like, this is something that's not ever going to let me down. This is something I'm good at because I'm addicted to it, because I'm stuck in this cycle, and that I will, that it won't let me down. And but it's completely giving into fear. I think the bravest thing is to be like, oh, maybe I'll be loved for this. Or maybe I'm going to be an actor and that's my passion, and there's probably going to be thousands of other people who are a better actor than me. And it's a risky thing to kind of stake your self-worth on. But it's a lot more brave than saying, I'll be loved for being this. And it's not even love. You get attention for it, and that's all you feel you deserve. Yeah,
that's an interesting
it's
way.
Complicated.
But at the time, they put you in the hospital. I'm guessing the hospital staff couldn't educate you mentally what was going on. Did they give you some tools so you could at least not go back to that somehow?
I really don't credit that clinic for helping me recover. They helped me recover physically, but it wasn't a nice place. I more credit my family and my friends. I think the worst thing you can do to someone with those eating disorders, as I mentioned, is to treat them like a sick person, like that's all they are. Because the hardest thing for me was recovering from recovery, essentially, because I suddenly was physically recovered and I'd lost all the attention and all the worry that people had around me for that. And then it was like, I'm nothing. I've poured myself for 2 years into this pursuit and it's all gone and I have nothing. I haven't been doing my school. I don't have good friendships. I haven't any other passions that I really know about. It just, you have to treat, the way to really help people through that, and it is hard because especially when they're physically very underweight, like you're worried about them, but you can't just show that that's all they are. You can't just, I remember for like people when I was going through it, every time they would look at me, I would just be reminded of what I was going through, that I was sick. And you have to nourish the other sides of them. I really credit my family. When I got out of that clinic, there was this whole program for afterwards, how you have to weigh them all the time and track their calories, and my parents didn't do any of that. They really just treated me like normal. They helped me, they were very sensitive, but they helped like love me for the other things. Like I was starting to be like, oh, I do like acting, oh, I like art, oh, I like animals, and I was starting to pursue those things more. And the fact that they would see these things and be like, this is great, you're good at this, and that gave me the courage to pursue those and stop depending on an eating disorder for self-worth.
Right. I mentored a 10-year-old boy here in London for like a year when I was in banking, and they said that the boys that have kind of their behavioral difficulties, they'll kind of lash out and get into fights, but a lot of the girls go inward,
right,
and damage themselves, or eating disorder and that kind of thing. So
right.
I'm guessing that's just kind of a feminine trait, maybe, because you have that control, and then you can see that now I am in power of something.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I always thought that was interesting, but I still don't know exactly why.
I guess, I suppose it's a feminine quality. So wait, what did you say the boys do?
The boys would more get aggressive, and destroy things and fight and those kinds of things and misbehave, where a lot of times extroverted behavior, where there's a lot of times the girls went introverted, self-harm, right, or eating disorders, bulimia.
Yeah, but that's also something that's like forced on women, this idea that you have to be smaller, not just physically, your energy and everything, like this acquiescence that you shouldn't stand out or take up too much space. That's something that all women have to deal with. Like, to be loud, to be big, to be even, curvaceous is like a statement. And when you're young and you haven't figured out yourself and you don't love yourself, that's too risky to make those kind of statements. So it's probably why, something to do with that. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, I still have more to think about it. So, all right, so you come out of that, you come back to the parents really supportive, you get back into acting more. It sounds like your parents obviously supported your acting, to have, the teachers and things like that.
Yeah, like they supported everything that, like, our love, so it's developing yourself, but I think it's just like in Ireland, you don't go to stage school, very rarely anyway, and it's just not a common trajectory. It's not common for most people. Most people, like, every time I get an Uber, I'm reminded of this. If you say you're an actor, they go, "Are you?" And they like turn around to check, do you look like an actor?
Right.
Yeah,
in London, not in LA.
No, actually still in LA.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like just seen as, it still is something different.
It's very rare.
Yeah, I suppose so.
And then what happened to you is quite
rare enough, though. Everyone's going for the same jobs. But no, they encouraged that. But I think I didn't really, at that stage I was still young. I secretly was like, I'm going to be an actor. But I didn't really speak about it. Although I did speak about the fact that I was going to be in Harry Potter long before it was in the films.
Right.
I just had this feeling that I was going to be in it, and I didn't know the route to it, but I had made a few tapes, and they were supportive. Like when I found out about the open audition for Potter, my mum was nervous because she thought I would like turn my head, and she thought, not getting the part, but going to the audition, and that I would be too heartbroken because I take things very personally, get very sensitive. Any kind of rejection at that age, especially.
And this is when you're
really
14, and the open audition was in London.
Yeah.
And your mom was worried that the experience of coming here and not getting the role might be hard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And whereas my dad was like, let's take a chance.
Let's
go, have fun.
And strangely enough, you had written J K Rowling years before,
Yeah,
because you were a fan of the books.
Yes, huge fan of the books. I wrote to her when I was going through the eating disorder because I told her that it was the only thing that took my mind off it, and that, like, anyone who's gone through it will know that that's a very powerful thing to take your mind off what you're going through.
Nearly impossible.
Yeah, exactly. And it was the one thing where I didn't feel like everywhere I turned to, people were, my siblings were angry with me, or my parents were worried about me, and this was something that just gave a lot of solace. So I wrote to her when I was going through that and said thank you, and I sent it to her, like, her editor, and her assistant obviously read it and was touched by the letter, and she gave it to her, and then JK wrote back. He wrote a handwritten letter. It was very, like, it was.
You got that while you're in the hospital?
I got that. No, I got that
After.
before.
Oh, before.
Yeah,
okay.
before I went into hospital or anything, and started a correspondence. We actually became pen pals.
Okay.
That was when I was about 11.
And this is before the movie started?
Way before the movies.
But the books were big at the time?
Books were big.
Really big.
Luna was already present.
Okay.
And I wrote to her about Luna specifically, saying she really frees me because she's such a eccentric. She's so weird, and everyone acknowledges she's weird, and it doesn't, for 1 second, it doesn't make her question herself. Like, it was such a revelation that somebody, yes, she's a fictional character, but somebody who seemed real, who she was so well written, could be so peculiar and so fine with it, and not as a defiant thing, just as I am who I am. It really felt like, a revelation of a character as a teenager. So I wrote to her about that, and I think I said like I wanted to play her, and Joe would write back and say that she doesn't have any control over casting or anything. She offered me like a role as an extra. She was like, hey, I could talk to somebody if you wanted to come on the set and play one of the Hogwarts students. And I actually, this was like really bold. I look back on my young self and I'm like, how did I have the nerve to do that? I was like,
boldness.
Joe, thank you, but I'm actually going to be in the films, and if I play a random Hufflepuff student, I won't get to play Luna, so no. Yes, not that sassy, but like I was like, thank you, but I think I need to hold out for the Luna audition.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, and Joe is JK's first name, her real name.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the extraordinariness of this story isn't lost on you, is it? That you could be
No.
writing her,
No.
and then later you come to the audition in London, and then I'll let you continue the story, but you know, your life could
Yeah.
also be a movie. You
Yeah,
realize.
no, that is, it does. I look back, like, at how crazy and how synchronistic it was. That's where I really believe in the universe, of like collaborating with the universe. And it's happened actually on a few roles since that I felt I was really meant to get, that the universe kind of makes it happen. But yeah, no, I understand how crazy it is. I also look back on my 14-year-old self and I'm like, how did you have the nerve to do that when you were so, like, I had so much crippling self-doubt and anxiety for any other thing. But this thing, I just had such belief that I was like meant to do this, and that this character was bigger than me. I was kind of in service to this character, and it helped me, kind of thinking of it that way helped me overcome my insecurities.
Yeah, I think that's what makes the most successful people in this world, is when they make it not about them, they make it about other people, or
Right.
honoring the character that
Right.
saved you or got you through a hard time.
Yeah, like channeling.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I want to hear more about the audition, but I'm guessing that they felt that, when you were auditioning. So,
Well, I was just like very, and I think that's something of the character. I didn't hold back. I remember them, my dad always reminds me of this story, that they said to me like, oh, why should we pick you? And I was just like, I had this answer. I was like, well, I know I'm going to play this character the best. I know her the best. And I was like, if you don't pick me, that's okay. That's your choice, but you're going to be wrong. I'm just like, my dad tells me this story. He'll remind me this at points. He'll be like, as your young, the philosophical self told me. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have that same kind of self-possession and confidence for everything, but that one was. And I do. I look back and I feel like I need to channel that side of me more often.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So you fly to London for this open audition with your dad.
Yeah.
And how many other actresses are trying for this part? And what's that just take me, what's that scene look like? I'm just kind of curious.
So,
What's it feel like for you?
So we got in the night before. The audition was, they told us on the website, they said on the website it was start at 8 and the doors would open at 12. So we got there for about 7:45. We had been in a bed and breakfast and we were all set for the day. We were like, cool, all doing this. And like, we got there and the taxi dropped us off at the top of the queue, and there was just like streets and streets of people winding, and we were like, oh, so we're actually late.
But they expect you to wait for 4 hours until it started, and you were late by being there 4 hours ahead.
Yes, exactly. Because people have been queuing overnight, and there was like all this press around and everything. So we walked all the way to the back of the queue, took about 15 minutes, and got there and just queued. It was really fun actually talking to other girls.
Okay.
There were a lot of really like bullshit types. Like everyone was like showing off and saying what they were going to do, and normally I would be intimidated by that, but I just wasn't, because I knew that wasn't Luna.
Right.
And then there was a girl in front of me in the queue, and her mom and me and my dad talked to them, and we'd been told that you have to be between the ages of 13 and 16, and we had to bring like ID and everything. And when we finally got to the top of the queue after 4 hours, she was found out to be 6 months too young, and she had to leave.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it was really like, look, that's what I mean, synchronistic. Like I was lucky. Luck was on my side.
Right. Okay. So you get to that line, open audition. What's that day like for you? You know, what's the process like? Did they know right away that you were on the short list?
No. Well, you all go through. Everyone of the age who's queued up got seen, and there was like several rooms. You had to fill in forms. We had to leave our parents outside, and my dad was like, "All right, I'll see you on the other side. See you at the exit." And yeah, there was just a few stages, filling your details. The first bit, and I really felt this was where I got nervous. It was where they lined up about 50 girls at a time. You had to step forward, and one at a time step forward, say your name and where you were from. And that was where it was just like, basically it was just based on looks and like height. And I don't mean like prettiest, as in like you have the right kind of look for the character. And I knew, I was like, wow, this is not to do with talent or anything. This is just something you can't control. And yeah, they picked out about 5 or 6 from each of those lines, and then I got through to that. And then they gave us a script to learn, and it was like the scene with the thestrals, and everyone else in the room was like talking and like between each other, and I was very just studious. I was like, no, this is my job right now. I'm not here to make friends. And yeah, and then one at a time we went through, read the scene, and that's when I knew that they were interested. Because she just stopped, and she was like, do that again. She had that look in her eye that like, oh, you're interesting. And then she's like, she said to her, can you get Fiona? And because I was such a Harry Potter nerd, had watched all the credits written to everyone in the cast, basically, I knew Fiona was the casting director. And then I was like, oh, damn, it's getting real. And Fiona came in after a few minutes and watched and gave a few notes, and then she was like, we'll be in touch. And then I kind of was like, oh, isn't that the thing that they tell actors will call you? And I was a bit down at that point, but I was also like, maybe. And then I went outside, and apparently my dad was losing his mind because I'd been in there for like 2 hours or something. Yeah. And so that was the first audition. Okay.
And then was it kind of weeks and weeks?
No, it was 3 days.
3 days.
So that happened on a Saturday. Yeah, Saturday. And then they called on Monday to arrange the screen test. And the screen test, suddenly it was all so surreal. David Yates, the director, was calling me, saying he liked my tape and he was looking forward to meeting me. And then they were like, Daniel Radcliffe will be in the audition. I had pictures of him all over my wall, so I was just really not holding it together well.
How do you keep it together when, Radcliffe is going to be there and you have to act and you're 14?
Sometimes I think that added to the spacey quality of my Luna. Okay. That I was just like, what is going on in this world? Why am I here? That sometimes Dan would just talk to me and I would just stare at him because I was so like Harry Potter, I was overwhelmed. But yeah, then that screen test was that Friday.
Okay. And then they said yes.
Yeah, 3 days later.
Okay.
And no, after the screen test, my dad was there with me again, and I remember David Yates signed a book being like, really great audition, great to meet you, Evanna. And I was heartbroken because I was like, he's signing off. He thinks that he's gonna send me away from my dream role with a copy of a signed Harry Potter book, which I already have 3 of. Thank you very much. I was just like, so I went back to this hotel. They'd put us in a fancy hotel, and I cried all night. And my dad was like, you probably didn't blow it. You never know. But I also, because I was so down about it, I think he was starting to believe she blew it. But then, then went home back to Ireland. And then on Monday, I was back in school and I was waiting for the call. And I thought, I had this idea in my head that if I missed the call, I wouldn't get they'd call the next girl. They'd be like, oh, she doesn't want it. So, but they called me after school and told me.
And then that's it. No more tests. You got it.
No more tests. Yeah, it was just that screen test.
Wow.
They were pushed for time.
They were filming very soon.
Yes.
Okay. And they did the open audition because they just hadn't been able to find people.
They had people, I think, that they really wanted to, that they were interested in, but they did the open audition, and they actually announced that, and I saw that on the websites that they had their final 5 for Luna, but then they said open audition just to check to see what's out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you trumped somebody else. Okay. And what's the next year of your life like? Do you remember much? And was it what I would think it would be? Or is it like, do people not understand that acting is just like any other work and you have to put in that work and it's not all red carpets and stuff?
I mean, now it's more work. It wasn't work then. I enjoyed, like, all of the acting was so easy, and I think it was also, the better the writing, the easier the acting is. Like, I've had since a lot of projects and even auditions where the character's so thinly written, they're just a plot device for somebody else, and none of J K Rowling's characters were this, so it was really effortless. It was more, I understood her, I'd read her so much, and I'd imagined her so much, so it was like all the work had been done for that, and also we had the best team. We had a director, David Yates, who was so sensitive, and I've since learned that not all directors are that way, and they're not talented the way he is, that he saw it as a collaboration. Even to me at that age as a 14-year-old, he credited me with this, I don't know, just the idea that you know your character more than I do. He's like, I'm not playing her. Whereas a lot of directors are like, this is my character, I wrote and created her, and you are going to do what I say. And sometimes directors will try and feed you their experiences, and that can only be like cerebral. That can never be in your heart because you haven't experienced it. But David Yates really understood that. So anytime he was unsure about a decision I made or the way I was playing it, he would just question me. He would just like talk to me, ask me a lot of questions, to the point where I'd be like, oh yeah, I hadn't seen it that way. That's actually more what I want to do. Yeah, it's very sensitive directing. So no, never felt like work doing the acting part. But the whole other side of it, the publicity and the going back to school and suddenly being like famous and people acting weirdly, I was not equipped to deal with that. And that was difficult.
Okay. And that's not fun, no matter how you slice it.
I was an awkward kid. I was introvert, and I would sometimes read at lunchtimes, and I didn't really, and I kind of I was very angry about like this attention that suddenly people found me interesting and suddenly wanted me to be my friend. It was like, no, I'm not going to, some people, I probably should have embraced that more and tried to make friends, but I think I saw that it was all a bit fake, and that annoyed me, and so I kind of turned against people more. I would talk to people less, which now in that situation I would act very differently. I think I would see that as an opportunity. Now when people are interested in me because of what I did or what I do, they see it as an opportunity to get to know them and ask them questions and to invite them on my podcast if they're vegan. But yeah, back as a teenager I found it very confusing, and but I guess it was very jarring.
Did you stay in that school in Ireland for many years?
My sisters were there and my dad was there.
Okay.
Teacher, and I did have friends there. I had a good few friends who pretty much, they all treated me the same. It was more the other people, the new people.
Okay. Yeah. But you would be like on the silver screen, they would see the movie come out, and then you would roll up to school, and this happened through multiple films.
Well, the films came out during the summer.
Okay.
So.
But still, it is a strange circumstance, right? A quiet.
Yeah, but again, it's like Irish people, they don't make too much of a fuss.
Okay. Yeah. And you're glad you stayed there as opposed to go to some private school.
Definitely.
Did you ever think about moving to London or the family or anything, going to Dublin?
Not while doing school. No, I was really happy, comfortable at that school. Okay. I didn't want to have to start again and be, people, like my friends there already knew me for who I was, so, no, it wasn't until after school that I left. Okay,
and you were part then of the Harry Potter train for the next how many years?
It was like 4 to 5 years.
Okay, yeah. And by the time that was coming to an end, was it time to be over? Were you looking for it to be over at that point? Or again, if you had to summarize those 5 years of what you learned, maybe good parts, bad parts, what would you tell us?
I really learned that all these people are normal. They just don't doubt themselves. I think I walked around those sets a lot of the time feeling like I don't belong here, I don't deserve to be here, and that I'm going to get found out, and that all these people are so much more talented than me. And I think like working with them over the years, I was like, well, they're actually not like significantly more talented. They just really work hard, and they work hard because they don't continuously think that they're a waste of space. Like it's again, I think it's that confidence breeds better work ethic, and that you invest in yourself.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, and I'll see you on the inside.
People want you to be happy just for their convenience, but it's not, I just don't think it wakes people up. I find the films that really affect me the most are sad ones that make you be like, oh, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't be reckless that way. I shouldn't be careless like that. I think definitely. And I would say, adding on to what your friend said about, or your guest, about happiness not being the thing, and I think it's about, as an actor, about feeling feelings, feeling everything, and just going fully into it and getting the full human experience.